Hello everyone, I'm Jongin Kim, violinist of your Philadelphia Orchestra. I'll be virtually joined by my dear colleagues, violinist Yuting Chen, violist Rachel Koo, and our principal cellist Hayeni. We hope everyone is healthy and staying safe during this difficult time of COVID-19. As we are celebrating women composers this week, we thought it was appropriate to introduce one of the greatest women composers to you, Fanny Mendelssohn, the older sister of her infinitely better known brother, Felix Mendelssohn. She was an extraordinary musician who wrote over 460 pieces of music, but very little of her music was published in her lifetime because of cultural restraints in her day. What we are about to play for you is her string quartet in E-flat major, Allegretto movement. It is the only string quartet she wrote, and we believe it is one of her finest works that needs more attention. We had such a great time playing this piece together, so we hope you enjoy it, and please continue to stay healthy until we meet again.
Welcome to Vision 2020's Toast to Tenacity. a tribute to the 100th anniversary of the adoption of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, guaranteeing American women's right to vote. It is a very special day, and I'm Lynn Yackel of Drexel University's Institute for Women's Health and Leadership, which is the home of Vision 2020. And Vision 2020 is a national coalition of organizations and individuals, hundreds of them all over the United States, who are working together for equality for women. The suffragists of a century ago would have appreciated the musical number that we all just heard, not only because it was beautifully performed by members of the Philadelphia Orchestra, but also because it was written by Mendelssohn, not Felix Mendelssohn, but his older sister Fanny, who during her 42-year life wrote 500 pieces of music approximately, many of which were published under his name. And that was because the social norms of the 19th century did not recognize women in such a professional role. Women also did not have a role in the work that went on in 1787 in the building behind me, Independence Hall, here in Philadelphia. The Constitution written here formed the beginning structure of the United States of America. It included a clause, a very valuable clause, that allowed for a process to amend the Constitution in case anything was left out. Well, part of what was left out was over half the population. Gaining for women the right to vote was the prolonged agenda of the suffragists we celebrate today. And every time I vote, and I've never missed an election, I think of those remarkable women. Toast to Tenacity is so named because no other word so appropriately reflects the persistence and determination that the suffragists demonstrated over 3 generations of work, 72 years. Women of all ages, races, and backgrounds worked together to win our right to vote. We can only imagine the thrill of achievement they must have felt a century ago today when the amendment was officially adopted, as they raised their glasses of grape juice, as Alice Paul did, because it was Prohibition in 1920, to toast their victory. They had spent all those years lobbying 36 state legislatures in order to enter 28 precious words into the U.S. Constitution. Today is National Women's Equality Day, and all over America, people are responding to Vision 2020's request to join us in this toast, just as they have joined us over the past decade as we've worked together to accelerate the pace of women's progress and achieve equality in this nation. The decade has covered many issues, but we have focused our attention on 50-50 shared leadership among women and men in business and in government, on economic parity, not only in the closing the gender wage gap, but also the retirement income gap, youth education, and increased civic engagement for women and girls. Vision 2020 is a coalition of many voices. One of those is in Salt Lake City, Utah. Her name is Nylan McBain, and she is a Vision 2020 delegate. Please listen to Nylan.
Hello from Utah. I'm Nylan McBain, and I have founded the nonprofit Better Days 2020, which has been spending the last several years telling the story of Utah's leadership in the national suffrage movement. In fact, this year, not only have we been celebrating the centennial of the 19th Amendment, we've been celebrating the 150th anniversary of Utah being the first place an American woman voted under an equal suffrage law. On February 14th, 1870, this 23-year-old school teacher, Sarah Young, cast the first ballot by an American woman under an equal suffrage law. We've also been celebrating women like Emmeline B. Wells, who was Utah's leading suffragist. She met 4 U.S. presidents in her work for women in Utah and the nation, was one of Susan B. Anthony's close confidants and friends, and edited one of the longest-running suffrage newspapers in the country, The Woman's Exponent. Also, this year, we've been celebrating Martha Hughes Cannon, this woman next to me. Dr. Martha Hughes Cannon was the first woman to be elected as a state senator in the nation in 1896. A 9-foot bronze statue of Dr. Cannon is on its way to the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. to be part of National Statuary Hall. It's been a great year for Utah as we've been celebrating the Utah women who led the way.
And Nylan is speaking on behalf of Utah and Better Days 2020. Nylan is a Vision 2020 delegate, and that organization is one of our allies. But she represents the role of the Western states in the U.S. in enfranchising women long before the federal amendment was passed. So this is a piece of our history that I don't think is terribly well known and is a very, very important piece for all of us to be aware of. So the suffragists wanted to keep their eye on the prize. The prize is equality, respect. Vision 2020 allied organizations reflect that same commitment, and you can see here who they are. Now, I mentioned that Vision 2020 isn't only made up of women. 2 of the men who have been a valuable help in advancing the cause of women's leadership and equality are next on our program. The first is John Fry, the president of Drexel University, where Vision 2020 is housed, and he's followed by Philadelphia's Mayor Jim Kenney.
Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to join Vision 2020 in celebrating this historic milestone today. Drexel University is tremendously proud to be the home of the Institute for Women's Health and Leadership and its trailblazing initiative, Vision 2020. Your decade-long work as a National Women's Equality Coalition has been inspirational. And now the Woman 100 celebration builds on that work and on the tradition of Drexel University, which, since its founding in 1891, has had a history of inclusion of women and people of color. That will always be a priority in our mission. My toast then is to the vision and tenacity of the suffragists who accepted no barriers to their aspirations. And I commend those who carry the torch forward towards gender equality in the United States. Congratulations to Lynn Yackel and everyone at Vision 2020.
Greetings from Philadelphia City Hall. I'm pleased to join President Fry in celebrating the centennial of the 19th Amendment and in congratulating Vision 2020, a National Women's Equality Coalition, on its leadership in keeping gender equality at the forefront of public conversation. For more than a century, Drexel University has been an important institutional leader in Philadelphia, and its College of Medicine is the successor to the first medical school for women in the world. As with American independence, Philadelphia is a home to women's history. Some of the most important leaders of the suffrage movement hail from our city, women like Lucretia Mott, Margaretta Fortin, and Harriet Fortin Purvis. Fortin and Purvis were African-American sisters, and like Mott, they were early abolitionists, as well as women's rights advocates. So on this day, Women's Equality Day, I say cheers to 100 years of women speaking up and speaking out. And I encourage the women leaders of today, like those at Vision 2020, to continue to carry forward the unfinished business of gender equality. Thank you.
And we thank John Fry and Mayor Jim Kenney for their support. The understanding among both women and men that America works better when all its brain power is engaged is essential to our future. Don't forget that the legislators in the 36 states that voted with us were all men. Speaking of leadership, I want you to meet our host for today. We're at a national park, Independence National Historical Park, and the superintendent is Cynthia McLeod, who is a good friend, a great partner, and a great host. So I'm delighted to turn this over to Cindy.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for your leadership and vision in getting us to this day. I'd like also to thank the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Washington Memorial Chapel at Valley Forge for wonderful support for this day and so many other times. It is my great pleasure to welcome all of you, virtually and live, here to Independence National Historical Park. I welcome you on behalf of all the women and men who work here, who are all devoted to the public good, working to preserve this place and share its many stories that center on human rights. Still a very relevant topic today in our country. As we commemorate the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, we also acknowledge that there were in 1920 and still are barriers to voting rights and equal justice for all. The Pennsylvania State House, or Independence Hall, has been a premier witness to peaceful protests for centuries, starting with that most famous gathering in 1776 within its walls. When John Adams was part of that Continental Congress, contemplating independence from Great Britain, he received a now well-known letter from Abigail Adams, his wife, advocating for the welfare of women. Part of the less well-known section says, "Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." On July 4th, 1876, 100 years later, when women still had no universal right to vote, the National Women's Suffrage Association saw this place and that time as perfect for pressing for women's suffrage. Among others, Susan B. Anthony came here decrying the ongoing taxation without representation. Anthony was an uninvited guest to the stage for the centennial ceremony held on this side of the hall, but she persisted by going to the other side of the hall with her message to the public. She there read aloud the Declaration of the Rights of Women of the United States. A generation later, in 1911, Alice Paul brought her open-air campaign for women's suffrage to Philadelphia to culminate in a rally right here on Independence Square, gaining widespread publicity for the campaign. Finally, on September 25th, 1920, a major symbolic moment for women's suffrage came again to Independence Square with the first ringing of the Justice Bell. Catherine Ruschenberger, an enterprising Philadelphian, had created the Justice Bell in 1915 to be a symbol of the women's suffrage movement, a replica of the Liberty Bell, but with its clapper fastened, motionless, to represent the muzzled political voice of women. It was here on Independence Square that suffragists and politicians gathered for the Justice Bell's first sounds ever to celebrate the adoption of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. We are so delighted that the Justice Bell has returned for this occasion. Decades after All Men Are Created Equal was written in the Declaration of Independence, the 19th Amendment to our Constitution, which barred prohibitions based on gender for voting rights, was a pivotal moment in American history that we had planned to commemorate throughout the year and throughout Independence National Historical Park with educational and immersive experiences. Our plans included acknowledging the fraught path to the 19th Amendment and its more full realization in 1965, the divisions, the racism, the rivalries, and the tragedies, as well as the triumphs. The pandemic put a halt to most of that. But this is history for all of us, and it is most true when everyone's story is part of it. Independence Square and Independence Mall for centuries now have been major symbolic locations for First Amendment activities that have advocated for the expansions of civil rights, expanding definitions of key phrases of the Declaration of Independence. In 1787, our founders wrote our Constitution in a way that allowed our government to change, and that it certainly has. Today, we can only imagine what Thomas Jefferson would think, how pleased Abigail Adams might be, how Ona Judge might rally. So hip, hip, huzzah to all those who have pushed for change, for justice, and for equality for all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cindy. and thank you for having us here in this very historic place. Today's event kicks off Vision 2020's Women 100 National Celebration of American Women. Some of the events had been postponed, but they're all going forward into the first half of 2021. And to honor the past and enrich the present and shape the future, that is our mission. And we are working with many, many different organizations and people around the United States. We've got wonderful, proud partners of our Women 100 celebration, like Independence National Historical Park and the Philadelphia Orchestra and others you'll hear from. But one of those whom we have invited here today and are delighted that she's here is the president and CEO of the African American Museum in Philadelphia. And it is nearby here in the historic area, and I'm so delighted to invite Patricia Wilson Aden to say a few words.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm pleased and immensely proud to join today's commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the adoption of the 19th Amendment. This commemoration is an important milestone in our evolving American story. It offers the opportunity for not only celebration and commemoration, but it also, and perhaps as importantly, allows for a fuller and illuminating dialogue. Whether you're here with us at Independence Hall or joining us virtually from your homes, today the toast of tenacity gives us a stage to applaud the accomplishments and the qualities of character of the women who most often are identified as heroes, or as I say, sheroes of the suffrage movement: Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Alice Paul, Susan B. Anthony, and so many others. But we also have the opportunity, and I would say the obligation, to celebrate the women of color who rallied for the right to vote with equal passion, determination, and resolve. Like the broader and still unfolding story of America's fight for liberty and equality, the story of American suffrage is nuanced and complex. Too often, over the course of time, those nuances and complexities, the cracks, the crevices, and niches, are glossed over, and the resulting story lacks the detailed gradations and dimensions that characterize factual and authentic history. The African American Museum in Philadelphia, located just a few blocks from Independence National Historic Park and other important cultural institutions, helps ensure that the story of America's founding is multidimensional. Our permanent exhibit, Audacious Freedom: African Americans in Philadelphia from 1776 to 1876, speaks not only about the long journey of African Americans from enslavement to emancipation and beyond. We include the story of the Black women's journey to enfranchisement. We tell the story of Sojourner Truth, who challenged notions of gender and race by declaring, "Ain't I a woman?" Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who used poetry in her public statements against slavery and for women's rights. And the Fortin sisters, Margaretta and Harriet, who were tireless advocates and activists and organizers for abolition and women's suffrage. The African American Museum's Audacious Freedom exhibit also reminds us that the fight for equality and enfranchisement went hand in hand and didn't end with the passage of the 15th Amendment or the 19th Amendment, but stretched well into the 20th century with the milestone Voting Rights Act of 1965, and actually on through to today. I salute the toast to tenacity for ensuring that today's commemoration of the adoption of the 19th Amendment acknowledges all the nuanced complexities of its history. Let us also celebrate all of the sheroes of the suffrage movement: Black, white, Asian, Latina, and Indigenous, whose passion, tenacity, and audacity made the suffrage movement possible. Thank you.
Patty, please stay up here and join me on the stage and sit in the other chair so you can help me with comments on a few things.
Sure.
And thank you for that. And I think it is not terribly well known that in the beginning, the women's suffrage movement and the abolitionist movement were very much together and working together back in the mid-19th century. So I wanted to ask you a question as the band is setting up here, because we're going to, the next piece is going to be some music. Cindy McLeod mentioned Ona Judge, and I don't know whether everybody knows who Ona Judge was. So could you just say a little bit about Ona Judge, who lived here in Philadelphia?
Absolutely. I was very pleased to hear that Cindy did mention Ona Judge. Her tenacity, what some have described as her thirst for complete freedom, spurred her to escape from the household of President George Washington. She had this brave commitment to self-actualization, and I think it's characteristic of the Black women who fought for the right to vote, like Ida B. Wells, who is an anti-lynching suffragist, and the late Ella Baker, who was a SNCC and NAACP field representative. So we have this long lineage of African American women from Ona Judge to the likes of Ida B. Wells and Ella Baker, who all joined in the fight for freedom.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. And I think, this is a very important part of the history that Vision 2020 and our Women 100 celebration want to illuminate this year as we go forward. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and say that music is an important part of any social movement. It not only has the power to inspire and unite people, but it also can speak for us when we have something important that we want to say. So today I have the pleasure of introducing one of Philadelphia's most celebrated female singers and songwriters, Megan Carey, a Billboard Critics' Choice artist. Megan.
Thanks so much. We're so honored to be a part of this wonderful celebration today. And we're going to sing an anthem that I wrote, that I sing for all of the women that we're talking about here today, and more, who have been brave and bold enough to speak their truth, even when society doesn't want to hear it. This is called River Rock.
Thank you.
I am no one's baby. I am not a girl. I have spent some decades rattling around this world. I am not the next new thing. No, I've been here too long. I have spent my life turning stories into song. I am not silver. I am not gold. No precious metal for you to mold. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I have come to see things through a prism lens as I make this journey closer to its end. At many turns I'm troubled by much of what I see, but I won't waste my breath declaring you've done this to me. I am not silver, I am not gold, no precious metal for you to mold. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. Every step along the way, I made my own choice. I tried to choose the truth. That's how I found my smooth by the rush of life, by the rush of life. This life. Join us on I am not silver, I am not silver, I am not gold, no precious metal, no precious metal for you tomorrow. I am a river rock, I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life, by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life, by the rush of life. This life I choose. One more time. I am a river rock. I want to hear you. Tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose.
Hooray!
You guys are amazing. Thank you for raising your voice with us. Raise your voice in November, please.
Hooray, and thank you both so much. Thank you for this wonderful anthem, which the first time I heard it, I knew it had to be part of our Toast to Tenacity today. Megan Carey and her wonderful band. So now there are a number of people that are responsible for making this event possible today. You've met some of them, but some are our sponsors. In this era of uncertainty, many events have been postponed, but we were pretty much committed to having this today if it was at all possible. So I want to thank Welch's, Wawa, Lincoln Financial, and our lead sponsor, the Bank of America, which were our sponsors for the Toast to Tenacity. And here from Bank of America are two short videos, one with Jim Dever and Debbie O'Brien, executives of Bank of America, who are doing a toast, and the other is Ann Limberg from Bank of America Private Bank, who will introduce our next speaker.
Bank of America is honored to be a presenting sponsor of the Vision 2020 Toast to Tenacity and join in this nationwide celebration of those who fought for a women's right to vote. As a proud husband of a pediatrician and father of a daughter in the financial services industry, gender equality and equity could not be more important to me personally. I would like to toast all of the women behind Vision 2020 in their tenacity to ensure that this milestone celebration of women, past, present, and future, came to fruition. On behalf of all of my colleagues at Bank of America, cheers and congratulations. Debbie, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks, Jim. As I stand here in front of the Women in Progress mural at 13th and Locust Streets in Philadelphia, I'm so humbled to toast the tenacity of all of the women depicted behind me. Many of them are less known, but we stand on their shoulders today. Bank of America is a proud supporter of Vision 2020 because we know it is critical to provide tools and resources for women's advancement and leadership. Here's to all of us exercising our right to vote on November 3rd, not only to honor our past, but to set an example for future generations of girls. Cheers.
Thank you, and good afternoon on this historic day, the 100th anniversary of the adoption of the 19th Amendment. Our keynote speaker, Senior Judge Marjorie Rendell, has served on the U.S. Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Philadelphia for more than 2 decades. Judge Rendell has spent her life in public service with a deep dedication to furthering our democracy and ensuring the rights of all Americans. Judge Rendell served as the First Lady of Pennsylvania from 2003 to 2011, using her role to increase civics education and responsibility among youth. She also served as First Lady of Philadelphia from 1992 to 2000. In 2014, Judge Rendell co-founded the Rendell Center for Civics and Civic Engagement, a nonprofit that educates students about the principles of democracy, the U.S. Constitution, and American citizenship. Unfortunately, due to unavoidable circumstances, Judge Rendell cannot be with us today, but I am so pleased to introduce Diane Semingson, a longtime civic, executive, and government leader who will read Judge Rendell's remarks. Diane is co-chair of Vision 2020's Women 100 Advisory Committee. On a personal note, it's women like Midge and Diane who continue to move us forward, building on the foundation of those who have come before us and encouraging us as we navigate our own careers and strive to set an example for future generations. At Bank of America, we recognize that women play a vital role in driving economic growth, and we know that when women succeed, we all succeed. That's why we're committed to making our company a great place to work for our female employees and advancing the economic empowerment of women in communities all around the world. On behalf of my Bank of America colleagues and our clients, I'm delighted to welcome Diane to the podium.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and thank you to Bank of America for being one of our very special sponsors. It is my honor to represent the Honorable Midge Rendell. She's a friend of mine, and I'm eager to share her remarks with you today. As we look back on the efforts of the women who came before us, champions of gender equity, we cannot help but be struck by the civic theme at its core: the importance of using one's voice to effect change, notwithstanding the barriers and burdens. Theodore Roosevelt once said that nothing in the world is worth having or doing unless it meets effort, pain, difficulty. We see in the struggles of the suffragists extreme effort, pain, difficulty. While it might have taken the voice and the vote of a man, Harry Byrne, to cause the Tennessee legislature to make the 19th Amendment official, it was his mother's voice that resonated with him. She wrote in the letter he carried in the pocket of his suit, quote, "Be a good boy and help Mrs. Cat put the rat in ratification," unquote. Byrne recounted later, "I knew that a mother's advice is always safest for a boy to follow." Mrs. Cat was Carrie Chapman Catt, the president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Mrs. Byrne's note was the product of tireless campaigning by Carrie Chapman Catt and all the countless women who paved the way before her. The women's suffrage movement, like any movement, was not created at any one time, any one moment, there in Nashville on that hot summer day. Its history is rich with millions of stories of perseverance and courage over many decades. That's the way we make our voices heard. From movements that made headlines to seemingly small acts in small towns across the country. Slowly, methodically, these raised voices turned the tide for future generations of America. But how can you raise your voice if you are banned from speaking in public? How can you become an active and engaged citizen when you're not educated or informed? And how can you join the democratic process if you aren't able to participate in any political activity? This was the paradoxical landscape presented to women in the early 1800s as the women's movement began. What I find most admirable about female activists in the 1800s was their perseverance and refusal to be silenced. Despite their treatment as essentially second-class citizens, these women not only spoke louder when they were told to be quiet, but gathered in vast numbers to mobilize change when they were supposed to stay at home. We are struck by their courage and resolve. While advocating publicly for change, Lucy Stone encountered men who threw trash at her, dumped ice water on her in the middle of winter, and threw raw eggs at her. Unyielding and indomitable, she wrapped her clothes tight around her in winter and wiped the eggs off her face, with the retort that the seeds of truth could not be so easily wiped away. She refused to pay taxes, instead returning a letter to the tax collector stating, "Sir, enclosed I return my tax bill without paying it. My reason for doing so is that women suffer taxation and yet have no representation, which is not only unjust to one half of the adult population, but is contrary to the theory of government." Alice Paul, an alumna of Swarthmore College, decided it was time to shake things up and led the very first march on Washington with 8,000 women marching from the steps of the Capitol all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue to the gates of the White House. She also led a campaign of nonviolent civic civil disobedience, known as the Silent Centennials, in 1917. For more than 10 months, the Silent Centennials picketed outside the White House in silent protest, with signs saying, for example, "Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty?" Although the Silent Centennials said nothing, their voices were heard. Although picketing was legal, the Silent Centennials were all arrested and jailed in what would be called the Night of Terror. I did not know this until just recently, that this was the first protest in front of the White House ever. And since this first protest in front of the White House, countless men and women have followed suit in protest on behalf of various interests. There are many ways to raise your voice, and some involve never speaking at all. The efforts that these brave women made and their eventual success demonstrate that we cannot limit our endeavors and activism to only short-term goals that can be easily accomplished. Big changes take time that can span generations. Some failure along the way is inevitable, and change is slow. History is not made in any one moment or with any one person. One thing we can learn from these women is that every speech, every convention, every protest, it all matters. And the way to make a change is to wipe egg off your face and keep going with the faith that those who come after you will take up the mantle and move forward. This is how we get things done. Looking forward, Judge Rendell said, we must teach our children to use their voices and persevere. At the Rendell Center for Civics and Civic Engagement, we have created curriculum that encourages children to develop the dispositions of engaged citizens and to appreciate the many rights and freedoms we are fortunate enough to enjoy thanks to the struggles of the Alice Pauls and Lucy Stones, and use those rights to effect change. Fortunately, many of today's youth like Malala and Greta Thunberg and the Parkland School students, seem to be getting the message. David Hogg, a student who survived the shooting of Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School, got up the next morning and said, "We need to do something," a refrain that should energize us all. The 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment is a great time for women today to measure our progress and reflect upon the many challenges that we still face. Suffragists and leaders paved the way, but we're not done yet. 100 years later, while we have every opportunity to vote, still, in Pennsylvania, nearly 50% of women don't exercise their right. We cannot rest on the accomplishments of the women who came before us. We must push forward. And surely, if our predecessors could raise their voices while men threw trash at them, doused them with ice water, and threw them in jail, we can speak out now with all the resources, technology, and momentum we have in 2020. We too must pick up the baton and move forward. Before I conclude, I would like you to hear from two young women, first-time voters this year, about what the ballot means to them.
Hello, my name is Naya Ray, and voting to me means agency. Voting serves as a vehicle for me to effectively use my voice to fight for the change I'd like to see in both my community and nationally. But most importantly, by casting my ballot, I'm fulfilling the dreams and hopes of those who came before me and fought tirelessly for my right to vote, especially African American women and men whose right to vote was not protected until 1965. For those individuals, their wildest dream would be the broad diversity of those today, celebrating the 100th year anniversary of the 19th Amendment and the power and promise that voting holds.
Good afternoon. My name is Mia Melendez-Ruiz. I had turned 18 recently this July. And with that came one of my newest and biggest privileges and responsibilities, voting. Voting for the first time this November represents much more to me than simply casting a ballot. It means being taken seriously, although I'm just 18, and my voice being counted and heard. We currently live in a world that continues to silence and undermine voices of color, leaving us feeling unheard and undervalued. With that in mind, and the blessing of countless women who have come before me, my mother, my abuelas, my bisabuelas, I will cast my vote to speak for those who continue to be marginalized by our society. I'm looking forward to and committed to using my vote to be a part of the change and transformation our society is clamoring for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia and Leah. I think our future is in good hands. Thank you so much. Alice Paul once said, "The women's rights movement is, quote, a sort of mosaic. Each of us puts in one little stone. 100 years later, that mosaic is still being crafted. And with each act of civic engagement, each voice, we add our own little piece. So my question to you is, what stone will you, or your children, or your grandchildren add? And to have the freedom to build that mosaic, we need our voices heard. And the best way for you to do that is to vote this year and every year. Thank you."
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for stepping in, and thank you for your leadership over the years, your generous support, and the many ways you help us. And thank you to Naya and Mia also. Next, I'm going to introduce Alexia Hudson Ward, who is a member of Vision 2020's National Leadership Circle. Alexia is currently the Director of Libraries at Oberlin College, but she will soon be joining the senior leadership at MIT Libraries. She is speaking to us today from Oberlin College campus, and she's surrounded by the impressive stories of African Americans who were part of Oberlin's early acceptance of Black students. Alexia Hudson Ward.
This year, as we proudly elevate and celebrate the centennial of the women's right to vote, it is also essential to highlight the many courageous Black women who, until recently, were hidden figures of the suffrage movement. Women like Mary Church Terrell, one of the first Black women to earn a bachelor's degree in the United States from Oberlin College in 1884, born into a privileged mixed-race family who identified themselves as Black, Mary would garner international acclaim and recognition for her work in women's and civil rights. Along with her classmates, Anna Julia Cooper and Ida Gibbs Hunt, would shape the discourse and global strategies in the fight for racial and gender equality for Black women through their writings, speeches, and activism. There were other powerhouse Black women leaders advancing the cause for equality and inclusion, such as Ida B. Wells Barnett, investigative journalist and educator, Nannie Helen Burroughs, orator, educator, religious leader, and businesswoman, Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, editor of The Woman's Era, the first national newspaper published by and for African American women, and Charlotte Fortin Grimke, poet, educator, and activist. These women, along with Mary Church Terrell, were seminal figures in the founding of major civil rights organizations, such as the National Association of Colored Women, founded in 1896, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, founded in 1909. Black women also refused to be invisible in voice and action regarding the 1913 Women's Suffrage Parade. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, founded in 1908, elected to not participate in the march as an organization when a letter requesting assurances of equal treatment for Black women participants sent by the organization's co-incorporator and first national president, Nellie Kwando, to the organizers of the parade was ignored. A new black women's sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, founded a few short months before the Women's March of 1913, made the brave decision to participate in the parade despite the disrespect they encountered by being forced to walk behind the white women participants. These women's courageous efforts continue to inspire generations of women and men in leadership. This year, the Smithsonian, the Library of Congress, the National Archives, and the National Park Service are among several entities that are honoring the contributions of these hidden heroines of the suffrage movement through free online events and exhibitions that can be enjoyed anytime and anywhere. Images for this video vignette are courtesy of the Library of Congress, the Oberlin College Archives, and the University of Chicago Library. My name is Alexia Hudson Ward, and I am the Azariah Smith Root Director of Libraries at Oberlin College and Conservatory, and a proud member of the Vision 2020 Leadership Circle. It is my privilege and honor to share some of the incredible histories of these amazing Black women historical figures with you. Join Vision 2020 for several events during our year-long commemoration of the Women's Suffrage Centennial. Learn more at women100.org.
Thank you to Alexia Hudson Ward. And I want to thank Patty for being here with me, and I was hoping to engage her in a little commentary after that, but we are slightly behind, so we're going to move along here. Thank you, Patty, for being with us. Many of our statewide leaders have been supportive of Vision 2020 and Women 100. And here are toasts from 4 outstanding leaders, 2 couples. The first is from Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf and First Lady Frances Wolf, who is the honorary chair of our Women 100 Advisory Committee. And the second is from U.S. Senator Bob Casey and Therese Casey, who I'm delighted to say is a member of the Vision 2020 team.
Hi, I'm Governor Tom Wolf.
And I'm First Lady Frances Wolf. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave voting rights to women.
It's hard to believe that just 100 years ago, women weren't considered a part of the voting public in America. Now, women are candidates up and down our ballots, and they've made up the majority of voters in every presidential election since 1964.
Of course, we still have a way to go in ensuring true equality. But many voices are lifting up this issue and calling for action against the inequalities that remain in our culture.
The suffragists who courageously led the fight for the 19th Amendment are continuing to influence the leaders of today.
And today's leaders are inspiring change that further promotes equality.
So, on this 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, let's give well-deserved recognition to everyone who has fought for equality, past and present.
And let's honor them by making sure we register and are ready to vote.
So visit votespa.com to register to vote or learn more about the upcoming election.
In this year, when our nation is suffering from a public health and economic crisis, we can draw inspiration from a time more than a century ago when women triumphed by way of uncommon tenacity to finally win the right to vote.
The ratification of the 19th Amendment took place during World War I in a devastating pandemic. May their struggle motivate us as we confront the challenges of our time. We must never take for granted the sacrifices these courageous women made for the right to vote. And so today we raise our glasses and toast their tenacity.
And I don't think they're drinking grape juice. What do you think? So our thanks to those leaders. And I just want to note that the year 2020 marks not only the 100th anniversary of women's voting rights, the 19th Amendment, but another important anniversary in this country, and that is the founding of the National Football League. The National Football League was founded in 1920, and this year it'll be 100. And of course, since we're here in Philadelphia, we've got a favorite NFL team, the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a partner in our Women 100 celebration. And here's a very brief message from Eagles quarterback Carson Wentz.
Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." Today we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which guarantees women's right to vote. We believe this historic moment deserves to be recognized and celebrated as a step forward. However, we acknowledge that this progress was incomplete as it left behind women of color who were not able to freely exercise that right until the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act 44 years later. As we celebrate women's suffrage today and recognize the long road we still have to achieve economic, political, and social equality, we want to remind fans and friends that the way to bring about the change we all wish to see is to exercise our right to vote. As John Lewis reminded us, the vote is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have. On behalf of the Philadelphia Eagles, I want to congratulate the Vision 2020 team for their leadership in civic engagement, education, and work towards equality. And lastly, I want to encourage all fans to visit philadelphiaeagles.com/vote to find out more about how they can get registered and where to vote. Thanks, and God bless.
And that's a nice partner to have. So the other toast that we want to bring you is very quick. But back in 1920, the U.S. Congress was pretty much an all-male assembly. Today, that has changed, and 24% of the members of the Congress today are women, the 116th Congress. Several of the women from Pennsylvania also have toasted us, and they had a message for us.
I want to thank Vision 2020 for commemorating this milestone. I often think how wonderful it would be if the suffragists could see Congress now.
Well, I think with that, we need to join our hostesses for a toast to the 19th Amendment. Susan, do you want to lead us off?
I would love to. So here's to all of you, to the progress that we've made, and to the work that lies ahead.
To the future generations of women voters and leaders.
And just like you, to all the young women out there, please run for office. We need your leadership. We need your numbers. We need your heart and your thought. Here's to the 100th anniversary.
And now I have the great pleasure of introducing a very important part of today's celebration. Not far from where we are right now is the Liberty Bell. And there's another famous bell that we need to know more about. So we're delighted to have the Justice Bell here with us and to hear the story, the wonderful story of the Justice Bell from the chair of the Justice Bell Committee, Maria Bommersbach.
Thank you, Lynn. Good afternoon. I'm honored to be part of Vision 2020's Toast to Tenacity, and thank you to the Washington Memorial Heritage, Independence National Historical Park, and Daughters of American Revolution, who enabled us to bring the iconic Justice Bell here today. History can paint a picture of events in different ways. The story of suffrage has been told many times, and most would agree that a woman's right to vote was secured over many years of trials and tribulations. However, there's little mention about the Justice Bell, which was a symbol of political emancipation. In 1915, Catherine Wentworth Ruschenberger of Chester County, Pennsylvania, brought the Justice Bell from concept to reality. She was inspired by the touring of the Liberty Bell and wanted to create a symbol to promote the cause of women's suffrage. She said the Liberty Bell was the creation of democracy, and the Justice Bell was the completion of democracy. So freedom first, then justice. So at the age of 62, she spent her own funds to commission a 2,000-pound bell at the Manili Bell Company in Troy, New York. She then purchased a flatbed truck for about $400, mounted the bell, and paraded it across 67 counties in Pennsylvania. to enable awareness, understanding, and gain commitment for the suffrage cause. The journey started in Sayre, Pennsylvania, and ended in Westchester. Catherine herself often accompanied the tour. And let us not forget the men, who also played an important role supporting the rallies and sharing in the driving of the truck. Even with all of this work, a statewide referendum failed in 1915. In 1920, the women took the bell on the road again. And as you heard earlier, on September 25th of that year, the bell was unchained and rang out 48 times on this square. In following years, the bell took part in parades in Washington, D.C., Harrisburg, and Chicago, and was used again in 1924 as part of the Pennsylvania Get Out the Vote campaign. The Justice Bell was retired upon Catherine's death in 1943, and when it's not taking part in a historic event such as this, she resides at her permanent home at the Washington Memorial Chapel National Patriots Bell Tower in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Although this beautiful lady looks similar to the Liberty Bell, I'd like to point out just a few differences. It has 13 stars for 13 colonies. It has the words Manili Bell Company in Troy, New York, where it was cast, instead of Pass and Stow, as it states on the Liberty Bell. There's no crack. The clapper is chained to signify the silencing of women's voices. Most important in today's environment, it has the words, establish justice, secure the blessings of liberty. So we look to the differences in the Liberty Bell and the Justice Bell as a reminder that although we are all different in some way, it is our duty to uphold moral rightness in commemoration of the men and women who went before us to secure the vote. Thank you.
And now we're just a few minutes from the toast, but a couple of things. Two of our sponsors have very quick toasts that they want to present also. So here are Lincoln Financial and Wawa.
Today, we all raise a glass to the women who fought the battles, to the women who know no limitations, to the tenacious women who continue to embody the spirit of equality. And at Lincoln, we are proud to champion that spirit as we all toast to tenacity.
Wawa is proud to support Vision 2020's Toast to Tenacity to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote. We value a diverse workplace made up of roughly 60% women, and women play a large role in Wawa's success, growth, and innovation at many and all levels. As co-chair of our internal Wawa's Women's Alliance, we provide ongoing professional development opportunities with many members participating in today's live stream, including everyone's favorite goose, Wally, who is proud to raise a Wawa coffee to toast this special moment in time.
And now, as we do our live toasts, we have delegates, allies, special people in the Vision 2020 family from around the country. And I will just read off who they are, and they will toast following my live toast and the ringing of the Justice Bell. They will toast during the ringing of the Justice Bell. So first, from Texas, Women Campaign, which is an ally. From California, the National Conference of Puerto Rican Women, Southern California, an ally. From Georgia, Women Voters USA, an ally. Betty Folliard from Minnesota, who is a delegate. Nationwide, the Campus Election Engagement Project, which is an ally. The Historical Society of Haddonfield, a friend of Vision 2020. From New York, Dare to Run, which is an ally, and also from New York, Unladylike, which 2020, which is an ally. So now I invite you all to raise your glasses or bottles of grape juice and to toast with me. On this 100th anniversary of American women's right to vote, we salute the suffragists with gratitude for what they did in their time and with determination for what we must do in our time. We honor their tenacity and the work that they started, and we pledge to finish that work, the unfinished work, to achieve equality and justice for all. Cheers. And now I'm delighted to introduce, Sandy Tatnall, who is a member of the Washington Memorial Chapel's Justice Bell Committee, and she's a descendant of Catherine Ruschenberger, the Pennsylvania suffragist who commissioned the bell, and Denise Van Buren, who joins us today in ringing the Justice Bell, is President General of the DAR. They will participate with the bell while our delegates and allies toast from around the country.
Hi, this is Liz with Women and we are based in Dallas, Texas. Our shows will be joining Patricia and Pierce of the National Women's History Alliance to celebrate the resilience and courage of those suffragettes who came before us to secure our right to vote. We are excited to join you today, and we would especially like to thank Vision 2020 for inviting us to this remarkable celebration. Cheers to another 100 years of women's history.
Hola, I'm Marjorie Patton, First Vice President representing Southern California chapter of the National Conference of Puerto Rican Women. Today, our members are gathering virtually for a presentation on the history of the 19th Amendment and Puerto Rican women's suffrage, leading to consistent high vote. Puerto Rico did not participate in 1920 due to its territorial status. But pressure on our island led to voting rights for lead women in 1929, and in 1935 we finally gained universal suffrage. During this historic centennial celebration, all eligible women must exercise a right to vote. Salud.
Hi, my name is Shanti Das from Women Voters USA, and we are a national grassroots organization based in Atlanta, Georgia. For our toast, we are profoundly honored to celebrate 100 years of women's voting rights and the passage of the 19th Amendment with this toast to tenacity, honoring the voices of all women who came before us with this very special savoring ceremony at the landmark St. Regis Atlanta Hotel. We're excited to join you, and thank you for your vote. Thank you so much for having us.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sheila Buchman, Director of Operations at the St. Regis Atlanta. On behalf of the property, it is an honor for us to be part of this amazing event. To celebrate this momentous occasion, allow me to savor a bottle of champagne. Cheers to women equality.
Cheers.
Hello, everybody. I'm
Barrett, founder of ERA Minnesota and a Vision 2020 delegate from Minnesota. For our toast, we are hosting a virtual national concert tonight at 8 Eastern Time, 7 Central Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. And we are inviting you all. It's called Face the Music for ERA. Just go to our website at eramn.org tonight to see world-class artists performing songs in celebration and honor of how far we've come and how far we have yet to go. So, cheers, everybody. See you virtually tonight at Face the Music for ERA.
I'm Johanna Madrid from Campus Election Engagement Project. We are a national nonpartisan nonprofit which works to stimulate electoral engagement on college campuses. For Steep's Toast, we acknowledge our work within higher education to foster campus climates that promote student voting and democratic participation for all individuals, taking into account past and present disenfranchisement. On behalf of Steep, our civic hearts are as full as my glass when we toast to our fellow modern-day suffragettes. Thank you, Vision 2020, for inviting us into this toast to tenacity. Cheers.
Hello, my name is Charlene Creed, representing the Historical Society of Haddonfield, located in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Today we are recognizing the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And as such, I would like to call special attention to some of our great South Jersey suffragists. Women such as Bertha Shippen Irving, Marvel Dansbury, Tilly Hastings, and Alice Stokes Paul. So raise a glass. Cheers to the women who had the tenacity to fight for our right to vote.
Afternoon. Happy Women's Equality Day. My name is Rochelle. I'm the founder and CEO of Dare to Run, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to train women how to run for public office in New York and around the country. Today marks the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote in the United States. Dare to Run is proud to toast the past, present, and future. We toast the suffragettes who are running for public office and serving their communities in important ways all over the country. 600 women in the 2020 congressional elections this year. We also toast to run the next generation of amazing female leaders who transcend boundaries and reshape their communities' ideologies in ways we can't even begin to imagine. Happy Women's Equality Day from Dare to Run. Here's a toast.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Morgan, and I'm here an executive producer of Unladylike 2020, a series of 26 documentary films on unsung American women from the 20th century, including numerous suffragists. Our women-led team is based in New York, DC, California, and Puerto Rico, and all of them join me in celebrating Women's Equality Day. We toast to bringing back to life the inspiring stories of women from the past on whose shoulders we stand. Thank you, Vision 2020, for being such an extraordinary ally and partner in the fight for gender equality.
And thank you to all these organizations and allies and friends all over the country. And I didn't mention the fact that the Justice Bell was rung 50 times, once for every state in our country, all of which are represented in our Vision 2020 coalition, of which we are so proud. So now we have the grand finale. We come to the conclusion of this historic and inspiring day as we celebrate a national journey. We are very delighted to introduce Megan Carey again and her world premiere of her inspiring River Rock project. I'll tell you more about that, but first I want them to introduce their video, the River Rock Project, and you can go to riverrockproject.com if you want to join this project. So Megan's on.
I am no one's baby. I am not a girl. I have spent some decades rattling round this world. I am not the next new thing. I've been here too long. I have spent my life turning stories into song. I am not silver. I am not gold. No precious metal for you to mold. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I have come to see things through a prism lens as I make this journey closer to its end. At many turns I'm troubled by much of what I see, but I won't waste my breath declaring you've done this to me. I am not silver, I am not gold, no precious metal for you to mold. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. Every step along the way, I made my own choice. I tried to choose the truth. That's how I found my voice. I am not silver, I am not gold, no precious metal for you to mold. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose. I am a river rock, tumbled smooth by the rush of life. This life I choose.
Yay, congratulations to Megan on this wonderful video and the wonderful message, which coincides with our message. So finally, in closing, I just want to say Vision 2020 extends its gratitude to all the people who made this program possible today in this uncertain time we're living in. Difficult times, I would say. Mostly, we thank the suffragists of a century ago who understood a thing or two about difficult times. We close by urging you to give those gallant women the greatest gift of all, which means that you vote in the election 70 days from now. Every eligible woman in the United States needs to show up and vote in this election to demonstrate for history just how important the 19th Amendment is. Thank you all, and we are adjourned.
I think they've got some credits there they want you to take a look at that are rolling, to thank all the people who put together this incredible incredible event. And I think Lynn Yackel deserves a round of applause for this incredible celebration of Vision 2020. And I just want to tell you that I'm so grateful that I have a voice, that I get to be heard. 100 years ago, I was being asked to stay home and make a home. And now I'm asking all of you women out there, to go out and build us a house. Go out and vote. I am building this house brick by brick, board by board. Building this house for my love. Building this house for the family. Family we have not yet begun. I am plowing this field seed by seed, row by row. Plowing this field for my love. Sowing these seeds to feed a family. Family will raise beneath the sun. I will raise these boards one by one. I will tend these fields in the heat of the summer sun. I have just begun building this house. I am raising you up day by day, year by year. I am raising you up on my love. Raising you up, you are my family. Family sent down by God above. I will take each day one by one. And I will teach you to climb each mountain as it comes. I have just begun building this house. Building this house. Bob, let's hear it. I'm building this house. Peter, let me hear it. That's Bob Beach over there on the harp. We got Peter Farrell over here on the keys. Let's hit Jimmy Coleman on the drums. I will raise these boards one by one. And I will teach you to climb each mountain as it comes. I have just begun building this house. I'm building this house. Let's hear a little something from Jocko McNally on the bass.